So a couple of lessons learned from previous um, campouts or survival trips is the amount of firewood I go through. I'm trying to get to the point where I can have a completely enclosed teepee type shelter with a hole in the top to block out all of the wind and have the smoke funnel up to the top and have a small fire such as this to keep the teepee warm only when necessary. Through a few of my winter survival treks, I've experimented with a couple of different types of lean-tos, none of which suffice at all to keep the heat in the shelter, to keep me warm without a sleeping bag or some sort of thick wool blanket. In the summertime, the springtime such as now, and even in the fall, heat's not too much of my main concern because it only hovers around 0 or above. So I just need to maintain a very small amount of warmth in my shelter to be able to be comfortable. Right now, inside here, it is quite dark out now, or getting dark out, I should say, and with the amount of heat that's being reflected off of these cheap little space blankets, I'm just cooking. I feel like I'm cooking. I'm roasting. Obviously, when I start laying down and not sitting up higher, my face won't feel as hot. But I'm sure and I'm confident that the shelter will definitely keep me warm tonight with just a small fire. With I'll be splitting a couple of big logs to throw on later to burn through the night. Also, as far as firewood is concerned, all of my winter survival treks so far, I've burnt about a tree per hour. That's kind of a rough figure. You know, thinking through the night from 8 to 10 hours of firewood means I need about 8 to 10 trees of wood to have chopped up to get through that night, to keep adequate warmth in those lean-tos. Obviously, with cutting down the wood to the point where I'm in an enclosed shelter in the winter, obviously I'll use far, far less. The advantage of the rest of the seasons is that there's no snow on the ground, so I'm gathering all this dead wood off the ground. So I'm not really judging by the tree, but I'd say so far I've got about 2 trees worth of wood packed up, which means I'm hoping to get through the night, at least till morning anyway, and not have to go scrounge for firewood with my flashlight if it gets too cold during the night. It's getting quite dark out now to be able to see the just the little small pile of firewood there. It's a fire inside. It's about 2 trees worth of just dead wood that I've scrounged up around the area. I'm hoping that that will get me through the night. I'm not burning very much wood. It takes very, very little heat to heat this entire space. So I'm saving a couple of the bigger chunks to hopefully throw on the fire so I can get at least a few hours of sleep tonight. I think the thing to realize when you're doing a lot of survival type camping, or if you're stuck out without a sleeping bag or tent and stuff like that, it's hard to make a sleeping bag. I'm not in an area where I have a ton of leaves. It's mostly just dead pine needles. Yeah. It's not enough insulation, and there's not enough of them to be able to... Man, there's birds out this late. There's just not enough insulation to be able to make my own wilderness sleeping bag type shelter, where you basically pile everything up on top of you to to try and insulate your body as much as possible. There's just not enough foliage where I live. So, it's the main reason for me coming out and trying all these different types of shelters to see what works best in sort of a semi-arid desert. There's the glow of the mylar. I'm hoping tonight that it works pretty well. I think people have to realize is that you're not at home, at least for myself. I know I have to realize I'm not under my down duvet on my king-size bed with my wife. I'm out in the wilderness on a bed of pine boughs, grass, a thin sheet of plastic with a junky old truck blanket. So it's definitely not the 5-star hotel. I just want to get to the point where I can pack in a small pack while I'm out hunting or out hiking with my family or by myself, to be able to sustain myself for at least 72 hours so that I know that I'm going to be able to make it out alive again, not having to endure the elements and deal with things like hypothermia, frostbite in the winter time, but to be able to sustain myself and come back not only alive but healthy and in one piece. I think it's getting fairly laid out. Starting to stack firewood. I can't see it inside the shelter here, lining the walls. And what I'm going to do is during the night, just every once in a while, toss a couple of pieces on. I'll probably have to get up a couple of times to bring in the rest of the pile from outside. But I'm just going to have another cup of tea. Brought 1 liter of water with me today. Building the shelter and cutting up the firewood, basically that downed that liter pretty darn fast. I've had 3 cups of tea so far. One of the reasons why I bring my little stainless steel cup so that I can boil the creek water that's around here, or any water that I can find, and make some tea and at least get some fluids back into me, because I know I'm feeling dehydrated, especially having a fire inside my shelter, or pretty close to inside my shelter. Very dry air, it sucks the moisture right out of the air, so my eyes and my mouth really get dried out. Just one of the things I wanted to mention. So if you don't bring a ton of water, make sure that at least some way of boiling water or purifying water. I do have micro-pure tablets as well, but I find it just as easy to boil water, and especially at night I just like to have a few cups of tea. Make sure that I'm getting rehydrated.